Hey guys, this is John McLaughlin.
And this is Dave Barnes.
And welcome to Dadville. Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
On this episode, we talk to our dear friend, Drew Holcomb. Drew is an artist that lives here in Nashville and is one of the coolest, wisest, hardest working, without a doubt,
Definitely
people I know.
working. And just looks great in a hat.
Yes, amen. He's married to Ellie. We talk about that. Holcomb, if you guys know her music, she's amazing, and they have an awesome family that if you follow on Instagram, I guarantee you're struggling with jealousy. But it was great. We had a really great chat. Drew was really honest and open about his life and experiences and his family.
Had some great old show stories.
Yeah, he's not old.
It just depends on how old you are. My children think he's old, And that's not a slam. That's just from their perspective.
Amen. So, that said, hope you guys enjoy your time here in Dadville. Dadville. So here we are. It's Dadville. It's John and Dave. We're here.
Welcome to Dadville, everyone.
We have got our first resident. our first new visitor. And I kind of I'm going to brag on this gentleman for a while. There's a lot of things to read here.
I didn't send any of this just for the record.
You didn't.
Okay.
You didn't. So this is truly, this is really impressive. So 140,000 records sold. 2,000 shows, which amongst these shows sold out the Ryman, Granada, Orpheum, Georgia Theater. Played with Willie Nelson, Don Henley, John Prine. Massive, massive song placements. One of my favorites is the NBA Forever opening day thing that y'all had Live Forever in, which was incredible. This quote I'm so jealous of. Some of the finest songwriting to come out of East Nashville of the last 10 years. That's from No Depression. Not only has he done these things, but he started both the Magnolia Record Club, which I have been a part of. I'm kind of glad.
Yeah. Carry on.
And also the Moon River Festival, which to me is
amazing.
That I immediately get sweaty and overwhelmed. But one of the coolest things about this that I forgot about is the charitable part of that you guys are raising money, $20,000 for St. Jude and the Songbird Foundation, which is so cool. And I got to play that a couple years ago in Memphis, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's also it makes me sweat. I have anxiety.
Yeah, I saw your upper lip beneath the beard. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, an Eagle Scout. But welcome to Dadville, Mr. Drew Holcomb.
Drew Holcomb.
Man.
The one and only. So we're going to start at the beginning, Drew. We're just going to start way back.
Let's take it all the way back.
Before we start, though, can I just say that you are, and you're not wearing a hat right now, which I'm a little sad about, but you are one of the great hat wearers.
That's true.
Well, thank you. I mean, it is sort of a necessity. I'm also one of the bald artists.
Well,
I would say bold.
Look,
balding at best, balding.
Balding.
And so, but what I've noticed as I've gotten older is about 5 years ago when it was really sort of getting to a crossroads for me on stage is that I'd see these photos from people in the audience, and I'm like, wow, the lights on stage, they triple the baldness.
They are assassins.
Yeah.
They're assassins.
They go
They're
straight to the core.
Assassins. It's like, hey, do you have skin under that hair? Because we're going to show it to everybody.
Find it. And let me tell you, brother, if you sweat at all and that hair begins to, we are going to find.
I mean, you two guys don't know what you're talking about because you both have beautiful man-manes.
No, look, I'm at the point where it has to be going at an angle.
So, yeah. I mean,
it can't be spiky or whatever.
I'll trade, though, if you want to trade.
Yeah. All right. Well,
my wife, who much like you is a truth teller, Drew, I mean, she's not going to pull punches. Last year, I leaned over to grab something, and she goes, whoa. And I was like, I was like, what? She's like, oh, that's
nothing.
I was like, what? She goes, oh, no, you're just getting a little, I mean, you're not, but it's getting a little thin on top. I was like, wait, what? And you, for really the last year and a half, I am now show pictures. I'm like, oh God, is there a up top shot where I was leaning over to get a pic and it's like, hey, look at me, I'm thinning on top. And I can't, it's become a thing to me.
I remember the moment that I realized it was happening to me. I was home for Christmas my junior year of college. So I was still very young. I was 20. And I was taking a shower and I was washing my hair and I looked at my hands and there were 7 long hairs on my hands. And then I look down at the tile in my shower growing up is white. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of that going on down there. And I went downstairs. I was like, hey guys, is this the thing? And my sister's like, yeah, we hadn't really wanted to tell you.
No.
I was like,
my
oh no. Got to find the woman.
Oh, we got to wrap this up quick.
L.A.
We got to wrap this up quick.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with some background.
Yep.
Probably everyone listening knows who you are, but let's just quickly go over some background. So where are you from?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Childhood, what were you like as a kid pre losing your hair? Back when,
Yeah, so I grew up in a very large extended family. I grew up down the street from my grandparents. I'm one of 4 siblings. There's 28 grandkids on
gracious.
on my mom's side, and
on your mom's side.
On my mom's side, then another 8 on my dad's side.
And everyone was there in Memphis?
No. So that was what I was going to say. So all but 4 of those grandkids were either in Memphis or Jackson, Tennessee, which is only 80 miles away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, some of them, I'm number 14, so the dead center grandchild.
Oh, wow.
So some of them were already
so there's 14
up
older
and
than
grown.
you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
As old as how old?
let's see, 51 now, so
Okay.
15 years older than me.
Okay.
16. No, sorry, he's 55. Yeah, that's right. The oldest is 55. So there were some that were sort of out of the picture, but there were 4 of us that were the same, 4 guys born the same year from each of the families.
Wow.
So grew up in this very sort of boisterous world of family and yes, that's right, literally a lot of family, a lot of your standard sort of suburban upbringing. My parents are amazing people. I've had a very
they are. I want to confirm that. They are wonderful.
They're fantastic. And some of that was sort of born in fire of a younger brother who's special needs, was spina bifida, was in a wheelchair. So we traveled a lot. That was a big part of our childhood. My dad loved to travel. He was a dentist, and then he got bored with that and became a financial advisor, which is
amazing.
But that sort of moment also taught me like risk and like
Oh, wow.
a lot of things.
How old was he when he changed?
Well, it was sort of a process. So he was a dentist, and a friend of his said, hey, I'm starting this financial services company. Will you come work on Fridays and help introduce me to people? And that Fridays became Wednesday afternoons and Fridays, and then it became Wednesdays and Fridays and
that's
Tuesdays.
hysterical.
And next thing you know, he's like, I like this more, and I'm quitting dentistry.
So
that was probably like 15 when he actually stopped, but he started doing that part-time when I was probably 7. So it was like an 8-year process of completely walking away from a lot of school and a lot of...
As a dude, as a dad, as a provider, or trying to provide,
right,
as a hopeful. There are a few things that fascinate me more in life than men well into their lives, kids, change occupations.
Yeah,
because it's just like that's not the script in America.
No, it's not, and it was really interesting too because he sort of had a set of friends that were all dentists that they had gone to dental school together, and they were there was just like a lot of like confusion, like, well, you don't just walk away from this, and he's like, well, I don't like it, so I'm gonna.
That's how I feel about musicians who now do something else, like now they're a realtor or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, well, you can't. You just leave. You
Right.
can't leave.
Right.
What does that mean for me? Should I leave?
The self-reflection goes, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Should I leave?
Boy. Oh boy. Do you remember how you felt watching him do that?
Because it happened, like I said, over time.
Yeah.
When I would go see my dad at the office, I like knew what day it was, and it was like, oh, he's at the dental office today.
Oh, wow.
Or it was just my normal.
Yeah.
Was this sort of dual track, It wasn't like a moment where like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared, Dad's. But there was certainly like there was one kind of definitive moment. He's like, when he let his dental license expire,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And he's like, for sure, this is gone.
Have you guys talked about it now? And like, has he been like, yeah, that was a really stressful time for me?
Yeah, it was actually, I think they're both sort of entrepreneurial jobs, though, that you kind of work off of residual work,
Right.
Because if you're a dentist, you have clients that come to you all the time, and if you're a financial advisor, you have clients whose, money you manage over time, and so they're both very relational. The difference is one is like it's a one-way street where you're talking to the person, they're and they can't talk back to you.
And then there's dentistry. Hey,
come on.
But that was the thing. He the reason the relational side of it, he didn't like not being able to have conversations with.
I can't imagine.
So that's why he walked away from it. But from my point of view, I was worried about like whether I was going to make the baseball team.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like, this is just what Dad does.
Yeah.
You know, and they had a very sort of stable marriage. And the things that I took away more were like my dad did this one, or my parents did this one amazing thing. At least every 6 weeks of my entire childhood, they would leave overnight, just the two of them.
Wow.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it was either like a weekend trip or a couple's trip, or what we'd come and find out later, they were like, most of the time, they were going to the Embassy Suites down the street.
Your parents are the best.
So part of it was with my brother with special needs. My mom was exhausted
Yeah.
all the time. And so it was a way for him to give her like, hey, let's go to dinner, go to bed at 9 o'clock. You can sleep till 9, get up and read your Bible and do your thing. And, you know, I'll go to work and then you can. And it was just like, for me, what it told me was like, okay, this is a really important thing to them. They're going to, it's not like, we didn't have a kid-centric home.
Wow.
We had a sort of relationship-centric home, if that difference makes any sense. So their relationship was sort of the primary nexus of our home, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which, you know what's so fascinating about that, too, is that my temptation would be you lean in harder toward the kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it feels like, no, you have to double, like, no nights off because this is what they need. And it's so profound to me that your parents be like, no.
Well, independence was a huge thing for my dad, for us. He was like, you will learn to take care of yourself.
Wow.
And he also used to say two things kind of related to that. One, whenever I was in trouble, he would say, don't you forget that I love your mother more than you.
Wow.
And I was, usually when I was being sarcastic to her or like talking back, teenage years, like, don't you forget, son. And then he'd say, you know, kind of later, it's like, hey, I'm only going to be with you guys, you know, for like 18 years. I'm going to be with your mother for 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a important.
Which as a kid, I would imagine just the most stable of foundation.
Yeah, it felt, I didn't have any fears about, you know, the survival of their relationship. Zero, no fears.
That's
so,
amazing.
but do you remember how you reacted to that when your dad would say that? Just remember.
Yes, my reaction was obedience and be sweet to mom, because if you're not, the hammer's going to drop.
Yeah,
you know, the hammer will drop. You know, I mean, this is the 80s and 90s, like discipline, and especially in sort of a Christian home, was a big thing. And so, there was certainly the classic, like, I'll tell your father when he gets home, and you're just like, oh, dang it.
Oh, yeah.
This is the ultimate.
The ultimate, yeah. And it was real.
And so your mom, was she home?
Yeah, she was
with
home.
you guys?
She was a dental hygienist when up until my sister was born, my older sister, and then became a stay-at-home mom. And then especially with my brother, you know, taking care of him was definitely a full-time occupation.
When did he pass, Drew?
99, so the summer between my junior and senior year of high school.
What was that like?
I mean, it was totally devastating. It was a surprise. I was actually out of the country.
No way.
Yeah, I was in the Dominican Republic on this summer missions trip, language immersion thing with my cousin, one of the four that was the same age as me. Jay had, you know, he was 13. He'd always had lots of health issues. He had 29, you know, major surgeries, major being defined by anesthesia, you know. So a year before he died, he had this sort of reconstructive surgery on the back of his skull. Basically, there was a development issue where his brain was growing faster than his skull. So there was pressure, which was causing seizures. And they think his death was related to that, but it was a total surprise. I talked to him 2 nights before on the phone. We had guests at the house the night he died. My aunt and uncle and family were there. And I got a phone call the next morning from my mom, just weeping, you know, you need to come home. Your brother passed away last night. It was just like, no warning shot, nothing. So, I mean, devastation was sort of the only way to describe it. What it did do for the relationships in the family, like it made my sister and I, and my brother and I, my sister, my brother, the 3 remaining children. I mean, we are just thick as thieves, you know, when you walk through that sort of pain and sorrow. And it was interesting too, watching my parents sort of dealt with his life and his death in different ways. And I think for my dad, more than there was like a very noticeable sort of thing that happened in him. Or before Jay died, he sort of had this, like, you know, grab life by the horns, and we're gonna do this and beat this, and discipline and, you know, order. And after his death, he became a much more tender and patient man. And I, you know, took notes from that a lot, especially as it relates to, you know, both in their marriage and as watching him as a dad.
Was there any script that y'all were given from the doctors about his lifespan? Was there conversations among y'all as a family that were
No, not really. I mean, it can be anything like what happened with him, or like the girl. There was another family that had a spina bifida baby the same day in the hospital that we ended up kind of doing some life with, and so she's still alive.
Really?
Yeah, and she's 33. So there's no, and her situation was not really that much like milder than Jay's, at least as young children. So there was no, I mean, the day he was born, some of the doctors said he wouldn't live the week, and other doctors said, again, this is 1986, 1985, and so medicine's, changed a lot, and so again, I was 3, so I don't really have memories pre-Jay.
Yeah. That's amazing. That was normal.
It was my normal.
That's insane. This may be a dumb question, but is that something that's still a part of y'all's? Like, how is he still a part of y'all's family?
Well, the most like fun recent memory. So my dad, Memphis, like sort of, upper middle class dentist family. It's like, Dad, we weren't even allowed to wear T-shirts in public. It was like,
oh my God,
collared shirts. You
that.
don't wear flip flops unless you're at the beach. Like
which sounds like a direct quote.
when you go on an airplane, you tuck your shirt in and you wear a belt and you have your slacks on.
Wow.
So something like a tattoo.
Thank you for wearing closed-toed shoes.
Yeah, you're welcome. I thought about wearing my flip flops, but I thought maybe we'll go on a flight today. So tattoos were like, or ear piercings or long hair.
Oh, yeah. That's
not a part of the situation.
Yeah.
So as I became a musician, I started sort of adopting some sort of countercultural, point of views, and started wearing, black collared shirts,
Flip-flops
for days, drinking beer, some of these things were like big family conversations at the time, I got a tattoo when I was like 25, and they were cool about it by this point, but it was also like they were not down with it, but they were like, you're an adult,
right,
you manage your own life. So, jokingly, my other younger brother also has a couple tattoos and has had a very different journey than I have in life, and it's taken him through some highs and lows, but we're still very close. But so he got tattoos even younger than I did. So we were like trying to talk my dad into getting a tattoo,
which I love that.
And it was literally like, yeah, right. When hell freezes over, Hamp Holcomb's going to get a tattoo. This guy wore a suit to work when he was a dentist.
I love it.
I mean,
he's like, I would rather wear flip-flops on an airplane.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, he cleans his fingernails every morning. He brushes his hair.
So much.
What hair he has, so it's like he's a very meticulous, clean-oriented. I mean, when we're in hotels, he won't go barefoot.
Oh, I love that.
Just like got his things. He's very quirky in that way. So he's going to love listening to this, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely going to send it to him. So we were joking, like, you should get a tattoo, And he's like, no. And finally, like after 2 years of us doing it, we sort of let it.
Yeah.
We dropped it.
Yeah.
And then 3 years ago, 6 months before what would have been Jay's 30th birthday, Dad says, hey, why don't you and Sam and I on Jay's 30th birthday go get a Jay tattoo? And Sam and I looked at each other like,
holy cow!
What? He said, "Yeah, I found this note that we have with Jay's handwriting in his own his own thing." So we all went and got on the same at the same spot right here on our left forearm.
That is so cool.
That was like, just a practical thing
that
happened, and
isn't it cool too? I mean, like seeing your dad, who has been, again, you kind of know he's got a groove, he's got a thing. He's got his little spot in the sitcom that you know what he's going to do when he opens the door.
For sure.
And to see your parents as they get older change, I know with my parents, I'm like, it's good for me to see that. So I'm like, okay, we can adapt. We can.
Yeah. And then there's also things you go, oh my gosh, I do that same thing. And this is what it looks like amplified by 30 years.
Right, that's right.
This is where I'm headed.
Yeah, that's exactly
This is my trajectory.
Yeah.
How do I navigate the fact that annoys me, and I know that I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah. So you grow up in Memphis in this great family. I mean, the Holcombs are wonderful people. They're just good, salt of the earth people. I love your mom and dad.
Your mom they're both truth tellers as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And your mom, I don't know that she may be like one of my biggest fans. At least she makes me.
Oh,
feel
she
that
laughs
way.
so hard,
and it's not the
you.
music. Like she's like,
I can't sit next to her
on
your show.
Instagram,
Yeah.
And I mean, just give me a hug. I mean, she's always like laughing about that stuff. So you go, obviously, great home in Memphis. You go to UT.
Yep.
So where are you in your journey in life at UT? Like, what's happening then for you?
Yeah, so in high school, my sort of interests sort of centered around music, history, and studying. Like, I actually loved school growing up, specifically history and English lit. So I was a reader. So I loved to read. I loved to make music. And then I was into sort of like individual sports. So like rock climbing, skiing, all those kind of things. So college for me was like basically those three things with a bunch of new people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
The deeper part was this thing with my brother, who was only a year old, and like learning about grieving and, you know, figuring out like whether or not the faith of my childhood is the faith of my adulthood, and, you know, that journey, which we all sort of take at some point. So I was studying as hard as I could and playing as hard as I could.
So you were a student, like you went to college.
Oh yeah, I went to college to like get after, and with the anticipation. Honestly, my goal, if you told me at 18 what is Drew going to do with his life, I'd be like, I'm going to be writing history books and a professor somewhere.
That's amazing.
In 10 years.
Yeah.
So music was just a hobby.
Music
was
was a
just
hobby.
Something you would do.
Yeah.
When you got
and
home.
I played music at Young Life in high school and then RUF in college, and so I had a proficiency.
Yeah.
As a guitar player and like a mild proficiency as a singer, but I had a lot of like always had a lot of confidence. You know, it's like Enneagram. I'm the 8, so it's like dare me to get up there and do something.
Oh yeah,
you count on it. You know, and add a little extra.
Were you writing songs at that point?
No, so I didn't start writing songs until my junior year of high school. Junior year of college.
Oh wow.
I did a study abroad program 6 months in Edinburgh, and I didn't really know anyone there. And I wasn't lonely, but I was alone. So sort of it was like, okay, what do I want to do this time that I have here? That's like away from. I kind of took that time as like a break from the extroverted life of Knoxville and Memphis.
Yeah, yeah,
and all the people that kind of came along with that. So I started writing songs over there. And it really came out of like in college, I fell in love with music in a new way. I mean, high school, I was a big fan of, Radiohead to David Gray and like all this sort of, Pearl Jam and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't want to be in a band.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I heard David Gray, and then I heard Patty Griffin and Ryan Adams, which took me down like sort of the Springsteen, Dylan. And I found in that music, like I found the voice of my grief with my brother. And then also sort of another thing about 8s, or just my personality is that like I see the world in its sort of sorrow and tragedy, and I can sit in that but I also kind of want to like see it change. And so music was a way that sort of I felt like it was telling me things that I wasn't finding in anywhere else, the expressions and stories.
So while you're there, you're kind of going, whoa.
Yeah, well, that was sort of my fandom was kind of percolating all throughout college, but then in Edinburgh, I was like, well, I want to give it a try.
Oh wow,
And in the meantime, I was actually writing my senior thesis at UT, which was about my brother.
Oh wow!
And so I was doing a deep dive into the whole story. I did like 40 interviews with everybody that was really close to him, from doctors, caretakers, friends from high school.
What was the thesis?
It was an oral history. So about like the impact of a single individual's life on a community.
Holy cow!
Wow!
And so there was a lot of healing. I mean, I literally would like go hang out all day my senior fall with friends, and then go back to my my apartment and listen to these tapes and transcribe stuff and just weep.
I mean,
which I never actually did before that. So it was 4 or 5 years removed from his death was actually when I really grieved it. And so that fall was when I'd come back from Edinburgh and I'd written all these songs. I didn't know what to do with them. And so I started booking shows. So while writing that thesis, my last semester of college, I started playing shows in Knoxville, and it was all friends at first coming out. But some of them were like, hey, like, this is good.
Yeah.
You should maybe try this.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, I'm applying to graduate schools for history and theology.
At the same time. So you.
I'm never at this point thinking that music is my future.
Because you wouldn't have been applying if
no.
so. Yeah.
No, it was just a diversion.
Yeah.
It was a hobby.
I was like, oh, this is cool. It feels good to do this.
Yeah, I like this. And my parents were very supportive. They were like, hey, my dad actually said this thing about college, which I've taken with me. He's like, you don't go to college to like learn a trade. He said, go to college and learn how to learn, and then you can do anything.
Wow. Jeez, we should end it here. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a good word.
Yeah, it's a good word.
Johnny.
Dave.
We're both right. You know, Halloween is just around the corner.
Yep.
And you know I can't get enough of them sweet, beautiful mini chocolate bars.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, you have one in each hand right now.
You can tell.
I can totally tell. I mean, they're melting. It's disgusting.
Okay.
We're going to have to limit you this year. You know that.
Please don't. But, I will say I'm a little spooked that Halloween is going to feel so different this year, with the virus that shall not be named.
Yeah, that's true. But luckily, we found a perfect solution so that our kids won't go batty with boredom. It's KiwiCo.
Oh, I'm feeling you there. I know that KiwiCo has changed the game in the Barnes household. Their innovative creations of science and art projects filled my kids' days with hours of fun.
My daughter the other day made this cool canvas by like dissolving these dye squares on it and making this cool like tie-dye bag that I truly am jealous of. She's like a little fashionista.
I've always said that. She scares me when she looks in my eyes.
Yeah.
And my youngest, Sambo the Rambo, made a xylophone out of rubber bands and pieces of bamboo. Really cool projects that are fun and educational.
In such an abnormal school year, it's truly great to have something that encourages my kids to be innovators and creative thinkers.
Another great thing is they have different crates for all ages. So there's something for every kid on your list.
Yep. And the good news is KiwiCo is offering Dadville listeners 30% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line now at kiwico.com/Dadville. That's KIWICO.com/Dadville.
KiwiCo is redefining learning with hands-on projects to build confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills. There's something for every kid, so order now at kiwico.com/Dadville. My dad, it's funny, my dad had to, the beginning of it, same. He said, if you go to college and learn anything, it's a bonus. It's really just to go and live and just figure out. And that was such a burden lifter for me.
Right.
Because I was like, oh, you're not going to be staring,
Yeah.
And he's like, no, just go, do the best you can.
Yeah.
But it's about, just learning how to suddenly live and do life.
With other people.
Yeah, with other people.
Yeah, responsibility and all that.
You come back from Edinburgh, you think your life has this one trajectory. Yeah. So when does the music, I was sort of around for some of this because you and Brad, my little brother are really close. And I remember him saying, you remember Drew? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, he's kind of thinking about doing this music. So when was the moment that you were like, maybe this is it instead of what I suspected it was going to be as sort of a writer, teacher, historian?
Yeah. I honestly didn't actually feel that way until 3 or 4 years into making a living at it.
Wow.
It still felt like this is just
even that long?
Yeah. My approach to it was definitely I'm doing this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to put all of my energy into it, but I didn't know if it was going to work. Up until even 2008, which was, 4 years into the whole thing, maybe even 5, from when I started playing shows. 2009, I started, I just didn't feel like it was going very well. Ellie had quit her teaching job, been on the road with me for 2 years. It just wasn't happening. We were still living pretty hand to mouth and just wasn't catching. We didn't feel like we were growing anything. And so we kind of had this conversation. We're like, hey, we're probably going to wrap this up at the end of the year. And I was talking to go back to school. By that point, I needed money to do so. And so I was talking to the Marine Corps about getting them to pay for law school. So this is I'm 30. So I was 27 when that conversation was happening. So even up until that point, I was still unsure that this was going to be my life.
Was that something you felt a grief in, or was that more of a functional, I'm looking at numbers and this just, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
was there a loss in that?
There was definitely a loss in it, but I've always felt because it wasn't some childhood dream.
Yes.
That I've been, since day one, anything that has happened in a good way has felt like playing with house money.
Yeah. Yep.
So there was a grief that was also but man, I got to do this crazy, weird thing for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It had highs and lows. It didn't work, and that was part of that was Dad as well. And then some other people in the business who said, you're choosing one of the most difficult businesses because it's not necessarily about, like, it's one of the only places where hard work doesn't necessarily yield a result.
Yeah.
You know, like you can work really, really hard at music for 20 years and somehow end up at square one. You know, it's not necessarily likely that that's going to happen, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And so I always carried that sort of knowledge that, like, hey, if this doesn't work, you're not defined by it.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that sort of empowered me to pursue it without having as much of a funeral if it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I've always felt so much simpatico with you about that. I think, one, that we're both from the South. There was no, I mean, even, and John, we're alike in this way, but even you had a dad that played music in a band growing up. So for me and you, we're both Southern kids, really great families, like supportive, you know, great mom and dad, sisters, brothers. And music kind of came out of nowhere for both of us.
Totally.
And I've always felt such a simpatico on that journey because I feel like when I do interviews and people talk to me about it, they're like, so how do you feel? I'm like, you say it better than I can. Like, it's house money. I've never, people are like, what are your visions? What was it? I'm like, I've never, ever in my life sat down with the board and gone, okay, guys, like, I want to play this place. I want to, you know,
Right.
and we'll have sort of flyovers about
Sure,
that
there's
stuff.
some ambitions.
Yeah,
but they're
there's some
not
ambitions. And it wasn't, and
expectations,
like
yeah.
you, once it hit, I was like, I want to do this.
Right.
So it wasn't that I just sort of was like on the lazy river of life in my career. But like you, I think that was something when Brad told me you were starting your career and this thing was, I even at that point was like, man, I just love when music comes into these sort of weird,
Yeah.
you know, like I wanted to be I was going to be a youth minister or a pastor, you know,
Right.
like this was not it. So it's funny to hear you say that because that resonates so much to me. Like at any point in my career, I've never been like, this is who I am and what I do. It's what my parents did, or, you know,
Right.
there's no grid for me. I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
we're just out there
Yeah.
floating. So it's so funny to hear you say that.
Yeah, and it was interesting because people say, like, were your parents musicians? I'm like, okay, my dad loves music.
Yep.
He's going to be frustrated that I say this, but it's true. He's tone deaf.
Yep.
But he loves music, but he has no history with it. And my mom, the only music was she kind of bangs out the piano, and then our alarm clock was hymns.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
the piano version. Up from the grave he arose. Da, 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 get out of bed. You know, that's sort of it. And so, I mean, most of that huge, you know, list of cousins, you know, it's mostly like a bunch of military.
Wow.
Which is part of the reason it's the Marine Corps
Oh, gotcha.
conversation.
Gotcha.
So a bunch of military, a bunch of people in the medical world, and then people that are just like businessmen and women, small business owners. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a person making a living creatively in that group.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up.
You're
as
the
like,
only one.
there's certainly some that have creative capacities. I mean, one
Yeah.
of my cousins who's in banking is one of the finest painters I've ever
Wow.
Uh-huh.
been around. But he didn't have that avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the difference between that was sort of the X factor for me was my parents sort of saying, like, hey, why not? I think my dad would say that he wishes that he had that permission, and not that you need the permission.
Right,
Right. Permission is the wrong word. The blessing
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
to go and do it. So
What made you? What in 2009? What is it the thing that makes you go, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to. I'm
not gonna walk.
Yeah, I'm not going to walk.
Well, released the song "Live Forever,"
Wow.
and all of a sudden, like that fall, which we thought was going to be our last sort of hoorah, our show numbers were like doubling and tripling, and people were singing along, and it got placed in Parenthood, which was season 1 of Parenthood.
Massive.
Yeah.
And it was this huge end of, like, it wasn't quite the last episode, but it was this like really big moment, the full song. It was a montage of the season, and the song exploded.
It's everything you'd want a placement to be.
Yeah.
And this was at the point where you had sort of let go a little bit.
Yeah, totally let go. It was like, hey, this has been fun. It's been good. It's not working. It's time to move on.
Wow.
I'm going to go back to school.
Yeah. From the outside looking in, from 2009 on, I feel like you guys have just been
Yeah, it's been like
killing it.
a meteor.
Maybe I need to let go of my.
Oh, that's funny.
So not only did you grow up in a family that was not musical, I'm sorry, but not as a career, but now you're married to another.
So
musician.
lots of vocational bloodline.
So what is that like? Like, I mean, I know, everybody knows and loves Ellie. She's just like the bright morning star.
Yeah.
She's like, and you guys as a couple to me are like, you guys could have a sitcom because it is like y'all's dynamic is
It's very
so
interesting. We're
wonderful.
very funny. It's very wonderful. We are very different. I mean, like when we got married, she said, somebody was like, you got to read this, the love languages book. So I had known about it already. Somebody told me about it. She's like, so which one do you think is yours? And I was like, it's not in here. She's like, what do you mean it's not in here? I was like, my love language is punctuality.
and you do not speak that, my
She's
dear.
like, oh, we're in trouble. She's like, what do you mean punctuality? I was like, if you want me to feel loved by you, please be on time.
Just be on time.
She's like, oh, it's going to be tough. You're not going to feel
She's
very
like,
loved.
then you need to lie to me. When I need to
Yes,
be
which is what I did. I'm like, we need to be there at 7:30. We need to be there at 8:30.
Yeah. You're fine. You're fine.
But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, Ellie had,
And she's the opposite.
yeah,
I mean, her whole family.
Her whole family, well, especially, yeah. I mean, her dad is won, wall full of Grammys, and all of her siblings are talented musicians in their own right. And she grew up in a, family where music was just sort of like, in the air, literally and figuratively. So she actually, the business side of it, she sort of grew up not liking, like sort of despising it, just growing up around it and seeing sort of the capacity that it had to wreck families. I mean, and stuff. So she was like, I'm out on marrying a musician. So she was a teacher.
That is so funny.
And one of the most talented singers I'd ever heard in college. Ellie was like, I'm going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And she was really good at it. She taught for a couple of years before she decided to go on the road with me. I mean, even into our marriage, she was a teacher. So the fun thing about it is, like, they are engaged. Like, her brother Ben and I can have like long conversations about like production stuff in a record. Like that's not something I can do with my sister.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you believe, so-and-so mixed this record?
Yeah.
Claire's like, what does that mean? Mix? So it's like, there's a whole different sort of cultural.
And you don't
thing.
have to deal with, her dad being like, wait, no, you're not marrying a musician.
Oh, for
what
sure.
What does he do?
Yeah. That was never a part of the conversation. Yeah. We get along really, really well. And he's offered a lot of wisdom over the years. I mean, the kind of music that he's, made and been a part of. At first I was like, oh, it's real different. I don't know if I want, I just kind of want to like, but now I'm like, well, he's just an incredible ear for songs and stuff. So every time I make a record, he and I go spend a day together and I just play songs for him.
Oh, I love that.
How cool is that?
Play him all this stuff. And it's like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's been fun.
Has there been sort of like, you got the musical family and she inherited like, oh, here's the sort of like salt of the earth. He's a financial advisor. The mom was a stay-at-home.
Yeah.
Have you each sort of gotten a little bit of like?
Oh, for sure. The only thing that's different is like personality-wise, I'm not like Brown.
Yeah.
And I'm not. But Debbie and I have some similarities, especially like we like to argue for fun. Like that's we both have that gene. But Ellie and my mom are actually like the same person. So that's been really funny because my dad and I will just like roll our eyes and laugh at just like, and it's simple things like, where'd you put the keys? Oh, they're in my purse. Where's your purse? I don't know.
Yeah.
That whole classic thing is like.
Do you
my
know what
mom.
your dad is on the Enneagram, by the way?
I think he's a 3.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom's a 7. And Ellie's a 7.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Like the funny thing about my mom is like she hates talking on the phone. So you call her and you're like, hey mom. She's like, hey, what you need?
Oh man, just straight to
And
it.
you're like, oh, I was wondering if you and Dad could come on the 27th and watch kids. And she's like, yeah, it's great. Sounds good. I got on the calendar. Love you. Bye.
Oh my gosh.
Like she's
out.
And so that's just like a little quirk of hers. But Ellie gets along so well with my family, which has been, we really both. We talk about this a lot, like the gift that is getting along with your in-laws, and we have it on both sides.
Yeah.
And there's obviously always challenges and things to walk through on that front, but
because the Bannisters are like they're almost diametrically opposed to what I would imagine how your dad rolls. Like they are just peace signs
in the moment.
And and it's a slow moving but really fun slow moving train.
Yep.
And yours, I know.
And Brown's like a great listener. He's sort of
Yeah.
quiet. He's not shy,
Yeah.
but he's a quiet guy.
Yeah.
My dad is like, all right, everybody's here. Gather around. Story time. Let me tell you about. Have I told you the one about? And you're like, Dad, yeah. You told us that one. Actually, you told it to us yesterday.
Yesterday, I know.
I've heard that one.
Yeah. So, what are the things that you like about being married? Like, what are kind of the pros and cons of that kind of a marriage with you and Ellie, where you have both creatives, you have both musicians, both stage people too? I mean, it's what are sort of the ups and downs of that?
So the one fear that I always had was competition within the marriage as it relates to like being musicians. And thankfully that has never really been an issue. And I think mainly because we sort of, once Ellie left the band and started doing her own thing, the sort of lanes that we are in are so different that there's not a ton of competing realities.
Yeah.
Like we're not trying to get the same venues. We're not trying to get the same accolades or the same, but our fans certainly overlap a good bit. But so that's been a real blessing to not have that, but it's certainly something that could creep in that I know can creep in sort of marriages where you have, you share a vocation. So it's interesting. We're very different. Like Ellie loves, cooperation a lot more than I do. And that she loves to do, like she loves co-writing. I like co-writing, but I learned to I used to hate it.
Yep.
And I can only do it with people I trust. She can go in a room and just write with whoever,
Yeah.
So when we write together, we have to be sort of we have to have a lot of patience with each other. I mean, there's lots of ways that we have had to give each other space. I mean, people always say, you're married to, even if you're married to the same person your whole life, which that's my plan. You're still actually married to 30 different people.
That's man. Amen.
Because you always change.
Amen.
You're always growing up, together and
hopefully, right?
Hopefully, that's certainly the plan. So for us, it's been a lot of practical things, like regular counseling, regular conversations. We do a trip every year called the State of the Union, where we look back and look forward. And
I love that.
So there's just and there's little things too that we do that some people think are like Ellie's tour manager thinks this is so weird. But when Ellie and I fly together, we don't sit together because we both like the window seat. So I sit behind her. And people are who know us, who walk by, they're like, ooh, they must be in a fight.
Oh, here we go.
And it's like, no, we just both like the window seat.
That is so funny. It's so functional.
So functional.
That's
like me. She's like, wait, we're going to do what? And I was like, well, you want to sit in the window seat. You want me to sit in the middle. And I don't want to sit in the middle.
So
she's like, well, I have to sit at the window because I like to fall asleep. And I'm like, that's great.
That's wonderful.
Do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit behind you.
My wife,
catch your head.
My wife needs to hear this segment because I like the window. My wife likes the window.
Yeah,
I sit in the middle.
See, I'll talk to her.
So do you?
Give me the phone. Give me the phone.
Do you feel like you are leading this charge of our relationship first, functional State of the Union trip every year because of what you saw your dad or your mom and your dad do growing up?
Certainly a big part of it. I also love. This is going to sound really cheesy, but I love serious fun.
Like, what is that?
Like, we're going to go to Puerto Rico. We're going to stay at this swanky place, and we're going to go snorkeling all day, and then we're going to sit down at dinner and talk about our regrets for the last year.
Wow.
And how we can sort of build off of those,
Yeah.
So,
and does Ellie, is she in on that?
Oh, she's in, yeah. Ellie's, she's 7. She's in for everything.
Yeah. Touche.
Yeah, she's like, what? Sure, sounds fun.
Yeah,
and then her 6 wing's like, but what if it all goes wrong?
Let's take different flights.
Different flights. So I do think it's there's sort of an insatiable, as an English lit lover, there was that, that Dead Poet Society ethic of the Walt Whitman suck the marrow out of life, and so Ellie, sort of the thing I fell in love with her about in college was she sort of had an insatiable appetite for good.
I love that.
And I was like, well, that's who I want to do life with, because I have that too, but I'm also sort of stuck in sorrow, and that's sort of where I live, and it's okay, so that's I'm fine with that. So we can do this thing together, and I bet we'll have a lot of fun, but you have to take it seriously, and you have to do the practical side of me. But you got to tune up the marriage on a regular basis in order to be communicating and not just be cruising through life.
Yeah.
Which makes a ton of sense. It seems like an obvious thing, but especially when you have kids, I think
hard.
that's something that totally falls by the wayside.
It does. Yeah. There's sort of a running joke in our friend group the wives are like two things. They're like, okay, we have to have a Drew line item on our budget.
Oh my gosh.
And what did Drew texted or sent an email today? Oh gosh, what did we just get invited to do?
That is hysterical. So they just have a budget. They're like,
They're
listen,
like, yeah, like y'all. Okay, Drew's going to take 2
Yeah.
golf trips this year, and they're gonna go on them.
yeah,
So just go ahead and line item that.
Yeah.
You know, and then,
Yep.
but also it's not just guys stuff. It's like I play this charity golf event every year, and the celebrity gift for it is $1,000 Ruth's Chris gift certificate. And so and that's in March, and so every summer it's like we're gonna go out 4 couples, and we're gonna go to Ruth's Chris, and we're gonna just drop the mic
Go
on the
ham.
place.
That
You
is
know,
awesome. You
So-
know
the
you are
waiters
living
see
a
you, they're
good
like,
life
yes.
when all your friends are like, yeah, you're just built into our annual budget.
Right.
Like you just rope people
That's
in.
really
I do. I like to gather people for serious fun. You know,
serious fun.
Serious
dot
fun.
com.
have serious fun.
So,
Yeah.
so you said your kids. So, first of all, just tell us about your kids. You're
Yeah.
about to add to the.
You are a
burden here.
dad.
I am a dad. Yes. So we have 2 with another. Probably, by the time people hear this, will be 3. So my oldest, her name's Emmy Lou. She's almost 6. She just started kindergarten. She has, when she was first born, we took her with us for a year. She's been to like 42 states already.
Unbelievable.
She's very gregarious. She's a lot like me personality-wise. She's very sort of pensive and serious, but also like loves people. But she kind of likes to be in charge. So we're kind of working on that.
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
Her little brother Huck is 3, and he is so sweet. He's like this tender. What I prayed for him, that he would have a tender courage. I
love that.
Which is something I don't think I had to like work for the tender part of that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna say you got the courage. No problem about that.
Yeah. So that's sort of who he is. He's like, he can run straight into that glass wall and not really cry. But as soon as you correct him, he's buckets.
Wow.
So he's just a very tender-hearted kid. He's really fun. So that's the 2 of them, and so far they get along really well. I mean, they fight every day, but they also really they sleep in the we put them in a bunk room, and they're like it's life together.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've taken them to a lot of really fun stuff, and I've really enjoyed being a dad. It's I honestly, this is because everyone told me how hard it was gonna be. It's actually not been as hard as I thought.
Yeah.
Because everybody was like, "Oh, being a parent is just the hardest thing."
Like
ever.
what were the warnings? Like what were the things they would fire off? They'd be like, okay,
the sleep thing. Which is true, but it's not that hard.
right.
Just go to bed a little earlier.
Right.
You can't do all the things you want to do. That's not true.
Yeah.
You can do some of the things you want to do.
Yeah,
you just can't do all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever is the money part of it. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
Yes, it is expensive. I mean, there's certainly some truth to that. Everybody has all these warnings. The thing that's so funny to me is some people, if they have kids that are slightly older than you, there's just one guy, he's a friend of mine, lives in Oklahoma, and he has 2 kids that are like both a year and a half older than our 2 kids. So when we had Emmy Lou, he's like, well, here's how it's going to go. This is so hard, the diapers and the this and the sleep, and then we had Emmy Lou, and then he has his second, and so then and he's like, well, and it was always just like, well, let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
And finally I said, hey, listen, you're always going to be like 2 years ahead of us. So if you want us to still be friends, I need the unsolicited wisdom to go away.
Yeah. Just see ya.
I really did touch that.
Yeah.
Unsolicited advice,
Yeah.
no more.
Yep.
Or else I'm gonna stop calling you.
That's it.
I
So
don't-
you know.
Yeah, just so you know, like all the warning shots all the time. Because I'm like, I'm never going to catch up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be like, well, now that once they get to 8th grade.
Let me tell you what's happening over here.
Yeah.
Oh God. Here we go.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff. There's just always people have, and some of it's beautiful. Like when people say, "Oh, they just grew up so fast," and you're like, "Man, that just rings so true."
Yeah.
Like I dropped Emmy Lou off
Yep.
at school on the way over
Yep.
here, and she's in kindergarten. And it's just like I'm so proud of her, but I'm also just like, how?
Oh, I know.
How is this happening?
Did y'all, when you and Ellie got married and were dating even, were kids like a big part of that conversation? If so, did y'all talk about how many, or y'all talking about?
Yeah,
that
I
now?
mean, the kids were an assumption. Ellie's 1 of 5 and 1 of 4. We both have happy memories of being children, and sort of the assumption that that's a pretty formative part of the sort of family experience. So we never really talked about how many exactly. I mean, we've talked around it, but then as far as when, I mean, we certainly made a choice to wait.
Yeah.
Because of the music thing. And, my sister, who's only a year older than me, has 5 kids that are all older than my kids.
Yeah.
There was just an assumption that we were going to have kids. And honestly, like, I knew that Ellie was going to be a great mom, so that was just the way she interacts with people and the way she sort of carries life lightly in general. It's like, this is going to go well. It's going to be hard too. There's like seasons where it's like, man, this is tough. And we're like stepping into one of those for us, for whatever reason. That first few months of newborn stuff is tough.
Yeah, it's gnarly.
So
especially once you already have kids.
Yeah.
The first kid is a little bit different. It's a lot quieter.
Yeah.
And then everyone after that is just chaos.
Yeah, it is chaos. The only thing I like better about the second and third versus the first is the first I would look at the monitor every 20 minutes, like, are they breathing?
Yeah.
Are they alive? And now I'm like,
That's
they up there for 8 hours? Yeah, they're fine. But because the rest of you have to manage the rest of the chaos.
Yeah. So what's the dynamic with the four of you right now?
Yeah.
Like, is Emmy Lou, is she a daddy's girl, or are they both? Like, I have kids that are almost exactly the same age as yours. I think we're a month behind.
Yeah.
So
let me
just
tell you
FYI.
about it. Let me tell you all about it.
Let me tell you what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, next week will be I've been through that week before.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
In 3 weeks, it'll be fun.
Yeah, that's right.
So both of my daughters, I have two daughters, they are both like, we are just now starting to see signs of them acknowledging me as a human being.
Right.
And a part of the family. What is that like with you guys?
With Emmy Lou, now that she's 5.5 or almost 6, there's definitely been a switch in the last year where she went from like always preferring Ellie to being like, Dad, what are you doing?
Yeah, what?
And the first time she asked you that, did you just break down in tears?
Yeah. Well, actually, there was a pivotal moment in our relationship when she was 2.5. We were down at the beach, and I had been on tour for like 4 weeks, so she didn't see me at all. And she was not having me, like wanted nothing to do with me. And we were down at the beach, just the four of us. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna take you on a daddy-daughter date to the like putt-putt place, And she's like, Mommy's coming. And I'm like, no, it's just gonna be you and me, It's just gonna be you and me. Ellie was pregnant, and so she's like, no, Mommy coming. And I'm like, no. Okay, so I'll just wait. So the next morning I wake her up. I'm like, hey, you ready to go? And she's like, no. I'm like, you're going. And she starts sobbing, holding onto Ellie's leg. And Ellie's like, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, I just literally extracted her from Ellie.
Yeah.
And sobbing, kicking, and screaming, put her in the car seat and took her to Waffle House and to the putt-putt place. Like, you are going to hang out with me right now. I am your dad, Yeah. And she stopped crying by like the middle of breakfast. Yeah. At Waffle House, and she was kind of like, started talking to me a little bit and like, you like your waffle? Yeah. You want some more sugar? Yeah. So like kind of feeding the beast a little bit. And so then we drove to the mini theme park place, and it was one of those ones that has like the little airplane ride and the little train ride. I paid for every single one of them.
Oh yeah.
Just spoiled her to death.
Super dad. You get whatever you want.
Yeah.
Sadie.
Super dad.
You know who doesn't do this?
Mommy. But that was a turning point because for some reason she was old enough to carry the memory, and so she still will be like that time we went to the place with the airplane.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I'm like, it was so painful for me because I just felt like, man, I failed. Like, this job is wrong.
Yeah.
It's because I was gone.
Totally.
The shame of like, you're not doing it right. And instead I was just like, I know I'm not doing it right, but like, I'm just, again, sort of the challenger thing.
You know what is so powerful about that story? And I think encouragement to the dads out there is, by God's sweet grace, whether we like it or not, we are programmed to love our dads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reminder, like hearing you say that, is there. I mean, John and I laugh about this all the time. Like, my kids still, Xana is the only of our three, our middle girl, who is starting to skew toward me a little bit. And she's the only girl, I'm the dad, you know. So that's you can sort of see that coming, but it's just such an encouraging word that since you pressed in, you were leaning on this truth, which is
I know that somewhere in there she loves me.
That's right.
Yeah.
And but you had to do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I'm so thankful for as a parent, is that even in those moments with my kids where I'm like, they're either mad at me or they want mama more, they still do want me.
Yeah.
And that develops over time because the dynamic changes, and as they grow up, your relationship really flourishes. The dad, I think, more the older they get. But I love that story because I think it's so beautiful and so true that now it's this, Ebenezer moment for her that like, oh, we did this. But I mean, 20 minutes in, you're like, I could just turn this car back around and
just go. I'll go sit on the beach and drink a Tecate, like I'm fine, but it's like that's not what I want.
That's right. I
was gonna say it's interesting too that there's a dynamic that there's a little bit of a missing sort of character in my whole story that we should that I want to come back to with it was just my grandfather down the street, which is something that I learned from him was that I carry with me as a dad is this invitation to his world. So Ellie is really good at sort of engaging the kids on their terms, like drop what she's doing, play the princess game, build the train set. I can do those things, but I have no natural inclination towards them. Yeah. But what I do love is like if I'm doing something and it's like relatively possible at all to include them, I try to. Yeah. So it's like, hey, I'm going to Home Depot. Emilio, you want to go to Home Depot? Yeah. Yes, I'll go. When we get to Home Depot, like, can I get in the cart with the steering wheel? Sure. Yeah. It's going to cost you 2 extra minutes to let you ride around in this stupid thing for a minute. Right. But we're still, getting the screws to put the thing in the ball that I need to do. Or like, hey, I'm going to go to the driving range. You want to go hit golf balls with me? Or like I bought this old Bronco for the only purpose of like, I had a motorcycle. Well, the motorcycle's not a family pursuit. Yeah. Sold a motorcycle, buy the Bronco. They love to ride in the back and we go get ice cream. It's like little things that I can kind of like make my world accessible to them. So my grandfather was, again, 5 doors down, had 28 grandkids, but he paid attention to all of us because he played really hard. I probably played golf with him 20 times in my life. I probably hunted with him 100, fished with him 80, and watched him do taxidermy every week. That's a big difference between Ellie and I is that like my natural thing is like I'm going to do my life and I'm going to bring the kids into it. So like if I'm down in my office and I'm like doing stuff that doesn't require like I'm not this won't happen if I'm writing a song, but if I'm like doing paperwork or whatever, it's like yeah, come on and bring your toys in here, sit right here next to me, and Ellie can't do that. She's like if they're there, I can't do this other stuff. I have to pay attention to them, and that's great. But like we've had to embrace that difference because for a while I felt like it wasn't okay for me to do it that way. That I needed to be like more like on the floor with them. And I was telling a story to myself that like Ellie was judging me for that and it wasn't true. Yeah. But if it just sort of, you make your reality, sometimes poorly, you can tell yourself the wrong story. So that's been a good thing. And I've been able to express that because I really learned that from my granddad. Like he was just so good at it.
The two things that I think about that are so profound to me about that dynamic is one, I think one of the easy things for me to believe, same as you, is the stories we tell. Is this idea that like, because Annie again, like she's down there and she's playing with the trains, and it is so hard for me to do. Right. Like I just, if Daddy come play with me, that sentence is the beginning of like the death knell. It's like, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah. Because I'm gonna.
And what's hard about it is that you're not in control. Oh, in my mind, I'm like, we'll have to do this for 8 more hours or something.
She is insatiable. She'll want to play T until we're bleeding.
That's the thing, because your kids they'll throw that ball against the wall or whatever 1,000 times until the sun is down and it's time to go to sleep.
Yeah. I'm crying and she's like that. Exactly. So what I think is always really interesting about what you just said and thinking about your granddad, I think particularly truthfully us as dads is some dads do that easier than others. But I think one of the things so profound about what you said is a reminder that you, Drew Holcomb, John McLaughlin, you guys are supposed to be the kids to your dads as Drew Holcomb and as John McLaughlin, not as super dad, not as let me sort of morph myself into whatever. Like God very purposely made you those kids' dads, and so you are your best.
You have your own unique offering.
That's exactly right. And so I think the thing to think about is like how can I do that well? So I don't do this. You need to play. But if that's not where you're going to thrive and it's going to frustrate everybody in the room, then what are those ways to do that? And I think as dads, when you invite your kids into your space, it is a sacred thing. It is. I really think it's a holy thing because we as dads, we like our vocation. We like doing. We like up and moving, like rest is hard. One of my favorite things I ever read. I read one of those John Eldridge books back when Annie and I were dating, and it made me laugh so hard. And he said, guys, he said, when you look at Renaissance and these beautiful paintings, women they're beautiful in repose. They're laying and they're either clothed or not, but you look at the painting like, God, it's like, how many pictures do you know of men who are laying down? And you look at it and you go, what a beautiful picture that man. Right. He said, no, you look at that picture like, get up and do something. Put some clothes on, And I remember laughing so hard at that thought. So but there's something about men in motion. There's something about when you go as a dad, and I think this is profoundly powerful, is when you go, hey, come with me.
Yeah.
Because I think they just instinctively like dad's space that's a sacred thing. Like dad's workspace, his just tool space, his yard, the things that dad manicures and procures and takes care of, like it matters to dad. And so when he says, hey, come help me in the yard, you're like, for real?
Yeah.
And so I think those invitations can be like these really powerful, holy invitations. Yeah. So hearing your granddad, it's such an encouragement to me. And I think, too, to relieve any pressure where we go, God, again, the stories, I'm not doing this well because I'm not down there with him. I'm not like our kids in the basement have a huge play area. Like I'm not down there all the time with them. But exactly like you and John, you're amazing about this too. I'm always encouraged by you. Like I can write with them in here. I've figured out how to I just like them being in here.
Yeah,
this door is never shut, ever. I want them to always know, like, Dad's studio is fair. And now there's times where I have to be like, hey, you have to shut up. Or, like, give me 5 minutes, But I think there's something so profound about the power of a dad going to his kids like, hey, no, I want you here too. Mm-hmm. I think that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Yep.
Well, and the nature of how that happened, that story, like, I remember your story about Emmy Lou reminds me of when my dad took me to a Colts game when I was super young. And my dad traveled a ton. I preferred my mom. I'm sure, I don't remember the lead up to it, but I probably didn't want to go.
Right.
Like on the surface, I didn't want to go. I remember that Colts game. I remember stopping at the gas station and him showing me how to like check the oil in the car and stuff like that. Like, even though on the surface I did not want to go, it was so impactful for me even in the moment. And now 30 years later, I remember little details about that one little trip.
Absolutely.
This is probably a bizarre question, but what kind of dad would you say you are? What's a space you're trying to kind of occupy? And maybe with that, what are the things you got to keep from believing? What are the lies as you occupy that space that you have to go, no, it's okay that I'm this or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, I kind of live in the tension of being like sort of disciplinarian, like heavy.
Yep. Because Ellie's not.
No. It's like when I say something, you will listen.
Yep.
And also I will tease you and tickle you and throw you across the room like nobody's business. Like so that tension of like, man, my dad is really fun and we enjoy playing together, but also like when he says we're done, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah.
Like
that's
get your ass upstairs.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that is a natural place for me.
Yep.
Like,
Is that because that's how your dad was?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think that's part of it. Dad loved to tease us and I mean, even in his discipline, he liked to tease us. I remember one time we were fighting about something, and the punishment was we didn't get to have dinner that night.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was probably in middle school, and so he was really upset with us about what it was. We were fighting. It was some food related argument, like that was my cracker. You stole my whatever. And he's like, all right, y'all aren't eating tonight. And it was like, oh dang. Dad's dropping the hammer. No food. So I remember I'm sitting I'm in the bunk bed, and I'm probably 12 or 13, and he comes in with this huge bowl of ice cream. Sits down right next to me.
No.
And I'm starving, and he just eats the whole thing. Talking to me about my day, and he's like, the very last bite, he like hands it towards me, and I'm like, and he puts it in his mouth.
Your dad just became the greatest guy.
We had some crazy
That's a Bill Cosby. Like, that's a Cosby Show moment.
We had some crazy punishments. Like, he liked to be creative with punishments, so it was just like...
So there was creativity in your house.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. I mean, the two strangest ones, which are both sort of gross, and but they're real. They happened. One was if you didn't make your bed, when you came home from school, you'd take off your dirty sock and put it in your mouth for a minute.
Oh, my gosh.
So guess who made their bed? Everybody.
Everybody.
You did it one time, and you're like,
oh yeah, you're out.
So when he was also the second one, this is really disgusting, but it's also funny. So as a dentist, he had high expectations of dental hygiene. So I hated brushing my teeth as a kid. And so one day he comes home, he's, talking. He's like, let me see your teeth. He's like, when's the last time you brushed your teeth? And I was like, I don't know. And he goes, all right, meet me in the kitchen. And he gets his little tools out, the scraper, and gets a saltine cracker, scrapes my teeth off, puts it all on the cracker, and says, eat it.
No.
Makes me eat it.
No.
Yes.
I bet you started brushing
I started brushing my teeth. I was like, I probably threw up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
He's like the classic, and if you had a filthy mouth, it's like, all right, spoonful of Tabasco. It's like,
my gosh.
Just like practical. It wasn't, he like had fun with his expectations. And he also, he had these like, he loves to like diagram discipline, So he had this thing. He's like, you sit down and you made a bad choice, and so he drew this thing. He's like, this is the road. These are the right choices keep you on this road. Well, you just made a choice that took you off this road. And if I don't turn you back to this road right now with this minor choice, what happens? You keep making choices in that direction, and the next thing you know, you're miles from where you should be. And he's like, take that and think about it. Or like the circle of trust. Like, I've given you this responsibility, and it expands, and now it's getting smaller. And you draw the circles, and you're just like, Dad. He's like, have I told you about the decision road? And I'm like, yeah, Dad. It's like 15 times.
I like that as a theme.
Yeah, the decision road. Ham Holcomb, disciplinarian. So he was very like, So I've certainly learned some of the expectations and discipline from him. But we're just getting started at it. So who knows if it's going to work.
Oh, man, Dave, 2020 has been tough. I feel for all my friends who own small businesses because I'm one of those friends, and you're also one of those friends.
You feel for me, and I feel for you.
you.
Every decision that we make is so important, and it's all hands on deck for every small business right now.
Well, here's the good news. Indeed is here to help.
Indeed is here to help. That's fun. I always feel so proper when I say Indeed.
You sound proper.
Thank you. I should have a cup of tea, Indeed.
Hey, pinky's up, right?
Hey, now.
Indeed.com is the #1 job site in the world. I don't know about other planets, but in the world, they're number one.
Number one.
Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and flexibility over your hiring.
Right now, more than ever, hiring the right person for a position is so crucial. Like, where am I going to find a project manager that doubles as a graphic designer, as well as someone who can help me fix my email inbox?
Oh, man, I've been looking for that guy.
Mm.
Also, that's wildly specific. Well, listen, Indeed can help with their powerful tools to make your search so much easier.
Even better, right now, Indeed is offering our Dadville community a free $75 credit. $75 to boost your job post, which means more quality candidates will see it fast.
So, go right now to Indeed.com/Dadville to try Indeed out with a free $75 credit. This is the best offer you're going to find anywhere.
No doubt. Terms and conditions do apply. Offer is valid through December 31st, so go right now to Indeed.com/Dadville to take up this offer. What are the things that have surprised you and yourself as a dad? Like what are the things that you're like, coming into like the moments before Emmy Lou was born, you're like, this is who Drew Holcomb is. And then 2 years in, you're like, wow.
The sort of telling moment that Ellie tells this story, is, I'm like not a very like affectionate, especially with like, encouraging. That's not my I had to learn all that. Emmy was born, we get home from the hospital, and she's like on the floor in her little pillow thing. And I'm just right there on top of her. And I said something like, "How you doing, Puddin'?" And Ellie goes, "Huh?" She said, "What'd you just say?" I said puddin'. Oh, my God. She's like, "Oh, my gosh, what's happened to you? Where did you put my husband?" And I was like, "I just had a daughter. That's where you put my husband. I just changed overnight.
Yeah.
I am a tender barrel full of emotions,
Don't push me because I'll cry.
Don't push me because I'll cry. That's exactly right. So I have been given, the grace of patience, I think, in ways that I never expected from myself. And then I've also recognized in myself how much I love control and having to realize that you don't have a lot of control. I like to conquer. Ambitious person, like to win the struggle. Yeah. And I've learned with parenting that it's like you don't get to win the struggle. You just do the work and pray for the best.
Yeah, that's a great word.
It's just that's just part of what it is. And the other thing that I think is really my kids, sometimes I can create the best fun and idea, but if they're not in the mood, you could beat yourself up and be like, gosh, I just didn't do this right.
Yeah.
Or, I'll be like, hey, we rented a pontoon boat for the day. We're going to go to this. And they're like, I want to watch Paw Patrol. You're like, well, guess what? You're not watching Paw Patrol. Get your ass in the boat.
That's right.
I don't say that. I'm like, no, we're going to the boat.
Look at Daddy.
Yeah.
Look at Daddy.
Look, do you see this? This face says,
Hey,
we're getting in the
remember
car.
The waffle story? Remember the Waffle House story? What did we learn from that Waffle House
Hey,
story?
you see this receipt that I got
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
boat place?
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to the boat.
Right, exactly.
You know, a fun aside, one of my favorite things I learned about, because Annie, my wife is an 8, like you're on the Enneagram. And one of the funniest things, and this was amazing to me, that I learned about 8s with children, like with really young children, is how, and the mother thing's a different thing, but she became a pile of goo overnight. I mean, we had our first child, and it was literally like, to
just like that.
I mean, Ellie's point, I literally thought, where has my wife gone? Because you are just this blubbering ball of beautiful mess now, and she's kind of like that all the time. But one of the things that's really funny is listening to these interviews with 8s is there's this affinity toward children. All these interviews I've heard with 8s say how much they love really young kids, like being with them when they had them, because
love babies.
It's pre-betrayal. There's this draw to children before they can hurt you.
Yeah.
And I saw that in Annie. And it's interesting because we've laughed about this. Like, as our children gotten older, she loves them just as much, but it starts to change because they disobey.
Yeah.
And they don't do. But, man, those first 2 or 3 years, like where Sam, our 2-year-old, is, you have never seen a woman that is more warm and obsessed.
Right. That's so interesting.
And watching it change, and it's changed because when they start to disobey, and it doesn't, she loves him as much, but you can see that in her, the struggle becomes different because she's like, wait a second.
Yep.
You're not just sweet and kind to me all the time now,
Yeah, definitely.
So John brought up an interesting point before we close up because we got a couple of questions on the outro, but 2 things that I'm really curious about. One, I just want you to do because I'm going to ask you to do a favor for me and tell a story because I think it's one of the funniest things ever. But with music, because we kind of skipped this, and I think this is worth talking about. What are your 3 favorite musical moments? I really am curious about this.
As an artist or a fan or both?
No, artist.
As an artist, okay. The first time we played the Ryman, walking on stage, and that
was such a good show, by the way.
Thanks, man.
God,
Thank you.
That was a great show.
It was like a dream realized that I never even had the courage to dream.
Amen.
Yep.
Which, how great does it feel now to even say the sentence? Oh, it's probably the first time we played the Ryman.
No, it literally feels like I'm joking.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. But my good friend Bear Reinhardt from Need to Breathe was at the show, and before I went on stage, he said, "Hey, take it in." He said, "Let the show come to you." And so I was able to be really present, and walked off stage into the dressing room. It was just the band in there, and Rich, my bass player, who is a sort of unemotional guy in the sense that he doesn't he's not a heart on your sleeve kind of guy. He's very kind of keeps to himself, and he pulls me aside and puts his hands on my shoulders and looks me right in the face, and he's crying. And he goes, "That's the best freaking show we've ever played."
Oh, God. Come on, man.
And he's never said anything remotely near that.
Yeah.
And
I've actually talked with Rich about this
Rich
show.
played with you a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a magical experience. So that's certainly one. And I think the second would be the first time we did Moon River. Emmy Lou was let's see, that was 2000. She was 1.5 or yeah, I think she was 1.5. And she was side stage, and we closed out the night singing Moon River, just me and Duggar, him on piano and me singing. And it was, packed out crowd, and we had gotten these illegal. Now the FAA called us about this, but no joke. But there's like lanterns. They're like about the size of they're about 3 feet in diameter, and you light them, and then they go up in the sky. We'd get we had like 40 of them that we had kind of scattered throughout the audience, and they went up. And we had the lights completely off. Played Moon River.
There's got to be some kind of like record, I feel like, for like the quickest festival like that has started, and now you're doing it. Where are you doing it now?
In Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. It's like sold out.
Yeah, it's sold out in 8 hours.
That's
amazing.
I think a big part of that is the lineup we got this year is just crazy.
Yeah.
The Avett Brothers.
But it's only 4 years old. This is only your fourth.
It's the 4th time in 5 years. We took a year off last year. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's
and that honestly just is about that. The wisdom in that whole story is picking the right partners. Like
Yeah.
that's not that I had some, miracle vision. It's just picking the right people to execute a dream,
Yeah.
and then kind of expanding that team as it grew. So that'd be my second one. And then my third one was go way, way, way back. The first time that I played a show in Nashville was at the Sutler. And the show is sort of irrelevant. I was opening for this guy named Corey Brannon, who was a Memphis artist, incredible songwriter. But I had invited Ellie to the show. We were just friends at the time. And I had written this song the night before after she and I had hung out called I Like to Be With Me When I'm With You.
I love that song.
And there's like 20 people in the audience, and she's there. And this is a song I wrote last night about somebody. And I played the song. And that's the night I told her, like, hey, we've been friends for a long time. And when I'm with you, I just feel like I don't have to be somebody else, and like kind of, so she knew the song was about her, but I didn't like say the song was about her.
I love that.
So that like, I was more nervous to play that song in that moment, knowing that the stakes of my future
hung in the
balance. And it's like, I was 3 times more nervous for that moment than I was to play at Red Rocks. Opening for Need to Breathe.
Yeah.
So it's like that particular memory is not necessarily about the music. It's about like sharing this creative thing with the hopes that it actually will change the course of my life.
Oh my gosh. I mean, amazing. So that said, I told John, I was like, so the favor I have is, will you please, and this is actually a good segue. I'm already laughing. Will you please tell the story about the show, the NACA show?
Oh my gosh, the Minneapolis one?
with the basement, with the piano thing.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh.
Let me just set this up for a second.
Yeah.
This is literally in my top 5 of all of my friends, like worst show moments. Because we've just gone. This is a great juxtaposition. We've just gone from like the
greatest moments to the most humbling moment of my life. Okay,
because they need each other.
They are. They are the yin and the yang or whatever. So when Ellie quit, I'm going to direct this story at John because he hadn't heard it yet. So it's going to be physical. I'll try to do my best to explain the physicality of it.
It's okay. You got your headset on.
I do. I'm the headset. I'm ready. I'm stretching, everybody. Okay. So when Ellie quit her teaching job a year into our marriage, she came on the road with me. And at the time, I was making my living playing a lot of like small colleges, community colleges to this organization called NACA. And I had a booking agent that was getting me these shows. And they were, they were really tough because like almost all the time, no one who was there cared. So this one particular day, and Ellie's now with me. I've brought her into this savagery of this world, but at least now I'm not doing it alone.
Because NACA, just globally, it's kind of known in our world that did you do NACA stuff?
I never did it, but
okay, because it's a really interesting little world because it's National Association of Collegiate
Activities.
So
it's like they're booking not just musicians, they're booking jugglers and magicians, and they have these budgets.
They have budgets.
They have budgets they have to spend, and they say we want to have music on Tuesdays at noon in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
That's what I picture. I picture cafeterias.
Okay,
you $300.
I'm going to paint you such a picture.
I'm going to giggle this whole time.
So Ellie and I had this run of these shows in sort of the Minneapolis, Fargo, Chicago, Iowa zone, and there's like 6 of them in 6 days. And so we've already been kind of like, we're like 3 or 4 days in this thing, and we go show up at this community college north.
There's your first.
Yeah, it's a community college north of downtown Minneapolis, probably 30 minutes north. And we get there, and they say, okay, so the venue you guys were supposed to play in is closed for renovation, so we've got you guys in this little sort of alcove of the student center, and but you have to be pretty quiet because there's a classroom above you, and we need you to play an hour and 15, and the sound guy will get you going. So we go in there, and the stage is like maybe 3 inches off the ground, and there's a pool table in there, a piano against the wall, important detail, and like 6 chairs in front of the stage, and then a bunch of like leather chairs kind of around. And the room is literally 500 square feet. I mean, it's tiny room. And the stage is that small because it's a drop ceiling. So the ceiling is about a foot above my head. Oh my gosh. And we get there, there's no monitors. There's just the 2 little speakers and this 19-year-old running sound. And so he sets it up, and I'm playing, and he's like, I got to turn it down a little bit. I'm like, I'm not sure it's on. He's like, yeah, they just told me it can't really, whatever. So we're sitting there, and there's like 4 or 5 students in the leather chairs, and then there's 4 or 5 students in these chairs that are there to listen, like full on listen. And so Ellie and I get up there and play, and it's barely amplified, and we're playing our set, and this person from the school comes in and is like, hey, they can hear you upstairs. Turn it. We're basically now playing completely unplugged to 6 people.
It's like, do you have to hit the strings when you're
right,
strumming?
Right. Yeah. Can you just
Can
airplay?
you whisper sing?
So one of the 6 people in the crowd is this guy who looks like MacGyver. Okay. Important. Okay. Yeah. So he's listening. He looks a lot older than us. Like he's like, looks like he's in his late 30s. And meanwhile, while we're playing, 20 feet away, a kid walks into the room with piano sheet music, puts it on the piano, and starts banging out songs on the piano. In the room that Ellie and I are playing a concert. Yes, he's like, dun, 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 and I'm like, all of a sudden I just stop playing, and I grab the sound guy, and I go, hey, I'm not playing another note until that guy stops playing the piano. And the 6 people who are listening to the show hear this conversation. I just stand there, and he's like, the sound guy's like, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to stand here. So I'm literally just standing there, and finally he goes over.
What is he doing? He's oblivious. He's just playing.
He's
the piano player.
Just playing the piano.
He's just practicing.
He's practicing, and so I'm just standing there. I watch the sound guy go over there, and all of a sudden they're having this animated argument. I don't know what they're saying, but they're like, no. Well, yeah, the guy out there said you got to play. Well, you can't. Well, okay, so finally the guy playing the piano just throws his hands up and drops his hands and he just sits there, and so he starts airplaying. The piano as his protest. Like, I'm not going to make noise, but I'm going to play over like he's practicing without touching the piano. Yeah. And we finished playing, and there's like these 2 kids right here who are really into it. They're just the 2 kids that are they're like loving the show, quote unquote. Yeah. We finish the show, and these 2 kids start talking to Ellie while we're setting up. And she's talking about music, and this MacGyver guy comes up to me, and he goes, hey, I need to talk to you. I was like, oh, okay. And his name was like, Vladimir or something like that. He's from like Belarus or somewhere. Yeah. And so he's like, you need to tell me about your record label. And I was like, what? And meanwhile, this guy's now is back to playing his piano stuff.
Of course. Yeah.
He's like, you need to tell me about your record label. And I was like, I don't have record labels. How do you get this show? And I was like, I have a booking agent. He goes, yes, he's a booking agent. Need you to introduce me. He's like, I play the accordion, the polka, very good.
Oh my God!
I play weddings all over the Iowa for the Eastern European communities. They have
oh my gosh!
They have the weddings I play, but I only make $200-300. I drive 2-3 hours. I'm very talented. Would you like to hear my songs? And I was like, well, we kind of got to go. Come. Grabs me by the shirt, takes me to the piano, kicks the guy off the piano. He's like, excuse me, need the piano. And he's like, starts playing the piano, and he's like, yes, so like this one, like, I love you, and he plays a little ditty, and it's like, oh, this one right here, one time I saw you. He's like, yes, you can take me to a record label. And I was like, no. Meanwhile, no joke, the 2 kids that Ellie is talking to, while she's trying to pack up, one of them has taken one of my harmonicas without permission and is marching around the room like he's in the marching band, playing the harmonica.
This is NACA.
Welcome to NACA.
And I'm like, oh man, and then all of a sudden he goes, listen, you have heard of Justin Timberlake?
No.
And I said, yes, of course. I'm from Memphis, and I'm alive, so I've heard of Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
And so he says, I am much more talented than Justin Timberlake. It is my calling to be a famous musician, and you must help me, introduce me to the peoples that can get me the record deal.
Oh my
And he's now literally angry with me. And so I finally said, man, give me your number. Just give me your number, give me your email. I'll do what I can, because I'm going, how do I end this?
Yeah,
I got to end this.
And
Ellie's
that guy
looking at me.
opened for you at the Rhino.
Yeah, absolutely not. So Ellie, we get our stuff, we get in the car, and Ellie and I just look at each other like, that is the worst 2 hours of my professional life, and hopefully it will never be exceeded because it was so bizarre.
Any one of those moments,
yeah,
would
exactly.
stand alone. If I'd gotten done with the show and that was already like, let's just say the crowd was small and the thing was overhanging, and you couldn't play loud, and then the kids start marching around the harmonica.
That's a story right there.
The
piano player.
The piano player.
Yeah.
Put them together, and you have a Mad Lib of nightmare.
That's a decade's worth. It was a career's worth.
A career's worth of absurdist moments.
Yeah.
another similar moment from that same era was I was playing this venue in Auburn, and this is one of my favorite moments I've had in my young career at the time. I was playing this pretty cool little kind of bar venue. Half the people are paying attention, half don't, half know who I am, half are just there because it's a place, $5 cover kind of deal. And there's this drunk guy who literally after every song, the first 3 songs is like, "You're not any good.
Holy crap.
You're not any good." He's just real drunk, and maybe he didn't like my music, which is totally fine. But the owner of the bar literally goes and he hears him do it the 3rd time, grabs him by the collar, and throws him out the front door.
No.
Yes. And afterwards, he was like, "You are good, and you're welcome to play here anytime you want."
No.
That is amazing.
And I was like, "My champion. I love you, man."
I had
Richard.
a show. Me and Wirtz were playing in. Is it the Sandpiper? What is the place in Charles?
Yes,
on the beach.
The beach place, right in Mount Pleasant.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it.
Anyway, we're playing there, and it's there's like 30 people there. This is early on. It's last year. Early on.
This is last weekend.
And we're playing, and it's that nightmare crowd that you guys know where you can't tell where they are. Are they with me? Are they here? Because
are they making fun of me?
Yeah. So
Right.
anyway, and we're swapping the shows. So Wirt's playing shows. I'm playing songs. He's playing songs. And one of the most bizarre moments in my whole career that ended up being really beautiful. So I'm playing, and everybody can tell we don't know how to lead this show because we're like, half the time they feel like they're listening, half the time they're not. So finally, I'm playing this song, and I see this guy like jump on stage, and I'm like, "Oh, crap!" Like I don't know how. This never happened to me. So I'm kind of starting this song, and I don't want to stop it because then it's going to make this really awkward. And he's drunk. He kind of stumbles over and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he leans in and he goes, "Hey, I want to tell you something, man." And I'm like, "Oh boy." He goes, "You're killing it. And those are great songs, and this sounds awesome. You're doing a great job."
On stage.
On stage. In my ear. And he looks at me and just gives me like a big thumbs up, and he's like, "All right." Jumps
Goes
off the
back to his
stage.
seat.
And I'm fighting tears because this is like the sweetest little moment. It was the most bizarre. Like, what do you do with that? Like,
Is that the Windjammer?
Yes, the Windjammer.
Okay, I have one Windjammer story. I've only been there one time. This was when I was promoting my first single, "Beautiful Disaster," which is about body image. It's from the point of view of a 17-year-old girl, all that kind of stuff. So my label sets me up on this radio tour. We're going to the Windjammer to play a radio event. This is like the second one of the day. You never know where you're going. You have no idea. Literally, this is a real short story. It was a wet T-shirt contest.
no.
Oh, no.
At the Windjammer.
No.
They're like, the label's like, "Well, we don't know what the single is, but like, let's just there's some event or whatever, and then he'll play the song, and then
Hold on.
The irony is
wet T-shirt
unreal.
contest.
It's as thick as the wet T-shirt.
Yeah.
So hold on. So they do the contest.
Beautiful Disaster wet T-shirt contest.
John, tell us a little bit about Beautiful Disaster.
All right, we're coming in hot 97X here with John McLaughlin. John, where are you from?
April, congratulations on your victory today. Now, John here's going to play a
my
song for you.
gosh.
Yeah, so I remember
Contestant number 3 was inspired by the song.
I see some of the contestants are crying their eyes out. Or is that we can't tell if that's just the water or their tears.
Yeah, it was like.
So did they do the contest and then
Well,
you played?
I think so. So I remember showing up, like the radio rep is there, Dylan, my guitar player, is there with me, and I remember realizing what the event is, and I'm like, I had like just got married. I'm like, I'm not gonna, for so many reasons, I'm not gonna be here for the wet T-shirt contest.
Yeah.
So Dylan and I remember like we went down, and I feel like we were standing underneath the deck because it was like outside on this deck. While the wet T-shirt contest is going on. Yeah, it's like, and this is Kristen from, and we're just kind of like standing there waiting. Like, I can't be up there.
That is hysterical.
And then they're like, the guy, Scott or whatever, he's like, "Okay, they're ready for you. Ready to go on?" And I went up and I played Beautiful Disaster.
Oh, my gosh, John. That may be one of the best stories I've ever heard in my life.
So I got to go one more here because it just it's just too much fun.
This is the rest of our day,
This
right?
is too much fun. So I'm playing the 5th show of my life after UT, was at the Floribama Lounge.
Ooh.
At the Florida Alabama line
Oh, yeah, that's
on the beach.
famous place.
And they actually have like a ton of great music. They do a songwriter festival and stuff. But I'm up there and everybody's real drunk in the bar. And there's these two ladies that are probably in their early 60s wearing like classic early aughts floral capri pants.
Yep.
And they're with their husbands and they're drinking. And all of a sudden I'm playing one of my more up tempo songs. And these women look wealthy and like, proper. And they get up on stage and start dancing on me and grabbing my butt and stuff and like trying to be funny. And I'm kind of like, what is happening? And my friend, I went down there with a friend, he's down there and he's like taking all these pictures of this. And so I finished the set and the woman walks up to me, one of the ladies, she goes, "Hey, who was that taking all them pictures?" And I said, "That's just my friend." She goes, "I need that roll of film." I said, "Excuse me?" She goes, "I need that roll of film. I'm the DA down in so-and-so county, and I can't have those pictures getting out."
Oh, my gosh, Drew.
And I'm like, the DA in, Carroll County, Alabama,
grinding
with
on
her
Drew
floral
Holcomb.
print. She's like this high-powered lawyer in some small town, grinding on me, grabbing my butt, and wanted to destroy the evidence.
Did you give it to her?
Yes.
Yeah, you did.
I should have been like for $500.
So transitioning back to dad world, what is the thing that will make you feel like a successful dad?
The honesty factor is like a big goal of mine, that my kids feel like they can be truthful with me when things get like actually hard as they get older, and maybe even after they're out of the house and grown up. But to be able to have a conversation with my kids as adults where they feel like they can trust me, I think that will be like certainly like a primary goal of mine, and that I don't get in the way. Like that's a big one for me. Kind of create opportunity, create a foundation that they know that they're loved and they can operate out of that they, have a future ahead of them, that they have, an eye towards justice for their neighbors, and for kind of to see the world that God gave them and to have a gratitude for it and to want to, share that out of generosity and give themselves away, in that way. I think that's all. Those are all sort of things for me. But I think if they trust me, no matter what life throws at them, I will feel like I did something right.
What is the one thing you want your kids to know?
There's so many. I mean, the practical side of me is like life's not fair. Like some of those kind of things. I mean, I think as it relates to me, I think the one thing I want them to know is that I love them no matter what. Period.
That's great. That's beautiful. And then kind of in conclusion, do you, like, for everybody that's listening to this, moms, dads, whoever's, but especially to the dads, do you have any, like, imparting thoughts? Was it something you wish somebody told you? Is it something that you've gathered since having your kids and being a dad? Is there any sort of, like, thought you're like, this to me is a paramount thought of being a dad?
So, Ellie and I have done a lot of stuff at Young Life camps over the years. And when we were pregnant with Emmylou, I was in this conversation with a bunch of the summer staff women, so college women. Ellie and I were doing like a little Q&A, guys with guys. I mean, like she was talking to the guys, I was talking to the girls,
that's awesome.
about kind of dating and all that kind of stuff, relationships, marriage. And so I flipped the script on the girls and I said, okay, I'm about to have a daughter. Like, what's the one thing that I should know, And this one girl pipes up and says, "Tell her that you love her." And I almost laughed. I go, well, yeah, I mean, of course I'm going to tell her that. And this girl teared up and she goes, "My dad never did."
Holy cow.
And it was like a major foot in the mouth moment for sure, but also like, oh, don't forget to tell your kids you love them.
Yeah.
Look them in the eye and I love you. The older I get, the more all of the sort of theological, philosophical, worldly, all the different ways that people tell you how to be and how to do, they really mean nothing if you're not operating out of the sort of idea of love. So we have to like let go of the fear of our kids. And, obviously love is discipline. Love is fun. Love has a lot of sort of doors, that we need to, like there's a lot of rooms in the house that we need to explore and stuff. But I think, when you sort of baseline operation of your life is love and not fear, there's a kind of endless possibilities. And, the thing I love the most about what my dad did. So my kids are 5 and 3. Who knows if I'm going to be any good at this? So I don't have like a ton of like, here's how to be a dad, but I can look back and say, I think the thing that my parents did really well was they sort of offered me a pretty blank canvas and said, if you're honest with people and you work hard and, you're a faithful man as it relates to being a husband, then we're in your corner, whatever you have. We're not going to tell you that you need to be this or need to be that, or that you need to vote this way, or you need to be a doctor, or you need to, live in this neighborhood. We're going to kind of have a blank canvas for your life, but, have integrity, love your family well, be faithful to your wife, learn to listen, continue to let God change you over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that's like having an open-handedness with your kids is probably a good thing, as long as you sort of build the right road for them, So that's kind of I don't really know what exactly the right metaphor is for that, but yeah.
That's great.
Thank you for being on. So I want to say this in conclusion. You're playing shows. You guys are always out rocking the mic. If they want to hear music, it's on iTunes, Spotify.
Yeah, all the things.
All the things. And all the what about Twitter and Instagram? What's your handle there?
Twitter is just Drew Holcomb. Instagram is Drew Holcomb Music. That's I'm not on Chapsnat or anything.
Chapsnat.
That is, somebody's going to start that after this podcast.
Hashtag Chapsnat.
Like $3 billion. Thank you for being on.
Well, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
All you wonderful, beautiful, kind people, thank you so much for listening to the episode.
If you have a second, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and write a review.
Unless it's bad.
Because that stuff really does matter.
And please follow us on socials. You can find us everywhere at Dadville Podcast.
Also, you can follow us each at Dave Barnes Music and at John McLaughlin to find out more about our music.
Thanks for listening.
Dadville.